Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lowdown on Low Code. Thank you for joining. We so appreciate you spending time with us most every week. If you like what you're hearing and you want to get the word out to other folks that might be interested, hit the like button, hit the share button. Hey, today's episode is another one of our cool ones. We've done a few of these. So as you probably know, the team here at analysis.tech is very focused on application development. We're very focused on data. And that tends to be where our mind goes. And we certainly understand that there is a component to this which is really, really important. And that's around design. And that is probably in as much flux right now as is the back-end application development process. If you've been listening, we started off very early in the podcast with Andrew Hogan of Figma. We've had Laura Rodriguez of IBM weigh in on the design topic, and we want to continue with that series. Today we've got Nick Cawthon from Gauge, and we'll get to Nick in just a moment. I'm also here with John Rymer. Always good to co-host with you, John. Nick, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Rob. Thanks for having me. Excited for this call.
Okay. Hey, Nick, we got a way of starting off these podcasts. We always do it kind of the same way because we really want to know where you came from and how you got involved in this. How did you find your way into the world of design? How did you find your way to founding Gauge? What's your backstory?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick because it could take up the whole time. I tend to find myself in these states of reflection as I go on in my career. It is the world of summer camps here in the Bay Area. It's where we put our kids in sort of directed childcare and find different themes and what they might be good at and try to encourage this thought. And I was in a summer camp at about 9 years old. And as I think about it now, my guess is it's when I first experienced the flow state. And you as adults, we always want to achieve that and get back to it. But as a kid, there are these seminal moments of, wow, I went into a time warp and I came out again. And wasn't that wonderful? That serendipity of when you leave a flow state and look back at what you accomplished. And I was sitting down at a table in the church hall of St. Teresa's Elementary. And I was drawing a drawing of the dogfighter planes in World War II. And this could have been as short as 15 or 20 minutes long, this exercise. But I remember coming out of this state of intense focus and productivity and looking around at my classmates and thinking, wow, I really went all in on this. And that stood out to me as I went through various camp programs at California College of Arts and Crafts at the time. And then into university courses where visual design was something that was a spin-off of the School of Architecture. And then as coming back from university here into my native San Francisco Bay Area, there was this wonderful influx of arts and design with technology. This thing called the internet was taking over the job market. And I was able to ride that upswell of arts and technology ever since. And I feel like we're in that same kind of upheaval process with relation to where we are within the industry and where we are with the technology and the mediums for which we design for.
Hey, Nick, are we talking about St. Teresa's right up from Village Market?
Right down the road. It's just a 9 iron away from you, Rob.
All right. I'm glad we got that clarified. John, over to you.
Yeah.
So Nick, you mentioned this in describing how you got to where you are today, that there is a lot of flux. There's a lot of change in design. Our interest is in business applications that service employees and partners and customers ultimately and all that. What are the big changes you're seeing? What do we really need to understand about the big changes in design? Tell us about that, if you would.
Yeah, I'll try to relate it back to design as much as possible, but I think it's industry-wide at this point, and I think design gets called into question of the hard definitions of our industry. What we're seeing now is the ability to go from an idea to a concept or prototype very quickly. Now, as you mentioned, the context in which you work in is in enterprise businesses, is in large organizations, CRMs. And we don't necessarily have that wonderful freedom to go from this idea to this concept because it won't integrate into business systems that are existing.
Mhm.
So it requires a sort of additional examination of how do we take this kind of efficiency and speed, ideation, generation of UI and UX and all these concepts and factor them in, appropriate them so that we are working within development environments of the enterprise. And that's my world over the last 6 to 12 months is how do designers take this newfound tool and make them work within traditional enterprise
Hmm.
organizations.
Hmm.
Uh, and I'll leave that there and see where you want to go with it.
Um, no, that's fine. Thank you, Rob. Over to you.
Well, I want to go to AI with it, Nick, because we have this massive shift that we're trying to get our arms around on the app dev side, and obviously, like user experience, design, interaction models are all in flux right now. Um, if I'm a design pro, how do I think about the world now? How should I be thinking about preparing for this world and making sure that this stuff drives the most value that it can?
Yeah. As designers, as the advent of user experience came about in the late aughts, early 2010s, it's not just about an interface anymore. It's about an experience, and those who derive emotions from those experiences are human beings. And therefore, what we should be really good at is qualitative research and understanding requirements and hearing and designing for emotion and reaction, removing those barriers and those friction points as a result of an intuitive user experience. Those skills are still very relevant. We may have had that UI all systematized and patterned and prompt based now, but that's always been the case. We've gotten good at design pattern libraries and brand extensions and components and have trained our algorithms to produce those for us. But there still isn't that understanding of emotion that a human can bring, that a researcher could bring. And that's where we should hold on to as look, we understand the process of making sure we have requirements and emotion and strategy and can pull out highlights about how this will change somebody's life professionally, and that we can really make sure that what we're designing is the right thing. Because now, with the increased velocity at the back end, the gap between design and development is tiny. We can go at a much further speed. It's design's responsibility to make sure that we're going in the right direction so we don't find ourselves far from home, missing the target by a greater distance.
That that
John?
is that is fascinating. I'm going to depart from the plan a little bit because you just hit on something, Nick, that we work on and struggle to understand. With any new technology, and AI is no exception, the initial use cases are usually almost always take costs out, go for efficiency. You just mentioned emotion. Emotion is about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is about connecting, right? Really connecting with that human, that person at a fundamental level. And that, it seems to me, strikes more to effectiveness of the system than its ability to take out cost. I'm curious, have I got that right? And is it we find it's a struggle to get people to actually prioritize effectiveness?
You've
And
talked
I wonder if that's been your experience as well.
risk mitigation. If you design and build something that hasn't been tested or vetted or understood what the experience is, and it's dead on arrival, the cost involved with the whole process leading up to something that doesn't have adoption, that the user acceptance testing says it fails, like that's what you point to say you are mitigating the risk of what we're doing again at a greater speed and a greater velocity efficiency is not going to be as effective as we intended it to be. And I think that, again, the strategy as we bring into this equation is going to help mitigate that risk of a dead on arrival product.
That's just excellent, Nick. That's really excellent. Let's go back to the plan. um, so we were Rob and I were working at Forrester back in the aughts, and um, when, as you pointed out, user experience design became became recognized, and people began to, clients began to incorporate different people, different practices into their developments. Has what do they need to know now? In 2025, have people basically nailed it and they understand it, or are there still things that they need to understand better in order to be more effective in what they're doing?
Yeah, bringing up a holistic topic of our relationship with technology. Because you have referenced the aughts, I'm going to call back a couple cycles. And I want you to give me some sort of interpretation of feedback of what you saw the relationship we had with technology across them. The one was this notion, around the turn of the century of digital transformation, of the pen and paper is going to be replaced by spreadsheets and Word documents. And there were
100%.
those that resisted it and said, no, we're going to be the way we're always going to be, and we're going to hold on to our process. And when you go into those stores or those restaurants, they're delightfully charming because they've held on to the old ways and they don't want to do the square readers or anything like that. It's always going to be the way it has been. Unfortunately, the B2B businesses have not survived, but the restaurants and small boutique stores have. The second wave was this notion of cloud, where there are still people that I work with that do not trust it. The
Uh,
privacy aspect, the reliability, they got burned at an early stage because they couldn't see that icon on their desktop that let them believe that their data was safe. And that kind of transformation of no longer are we on-prem, now we're a cloud-based SaaS platform. We can do things now that we couldn't because of these CRMs and these ability to go beyond the spreadsheet into data integration. If you didn't catch that wave because of issues of trust and privacy and reliability, then that passed you by. And now I think we're in this third wave of, all right, there are these algorithms, and there are certainly issues of trust and transparency and
mhm,
privacy
mhm.
that are coming out with how are we going to integrate these into our workflows and our processes. And I think there's going to be now this AI native generation, just as we saw there was a digital native generation that's below all of us, that are being able to incorporate and interpret in ways that we hadn't thought of and imagined. One of the conversations you mentioned, Andrew Hogan, to start off with, Rob, one of the conversations that we've been have as parents of young boys is how young children of how do we teach them how to use this in school? How do we teach our coworkers how to use this in their professional life? So these are going to be experiences that we design for and accommodate. One thing I'm trying to deliver, not only in conversations like this, but also in the design artifacts and the visual artifacts, is a sense of affirmation that there's a human behind what you're seeing and what you're reading, that
Mm,
there are hand drawn elements, that there are things that indicate that this isn't all just AI slop, that there's actually some accommodation being made to your skepticism that what you see and hear from me is going to be algorithmic versus emotional.
that's really interesting. And I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, is um, there's it's good to ask questions and it's good to get to work on this now, even though we're figuring it out as we go along. We don't know exactly the right answers for how kids should use these tools in the classroom. And by the way, it's changing all the time anyway. But
Yeah,
pay attention to it and really work at it now.
I think that's a whole podcast episode in itself. Is
Yeah.
it's kids and AI, but let's
Yeah.
stick with
Anyway, we'll move on.
the professional.
Thank you, Nick.
So
Over to you,
all
Rob.
of our designers so far, Andrew Hogan, Laura Rodriguez, and now you, Nick, have brought up this topic of kids and the interaction with technology. And I would love to have like all of you on one
Yeah.
podcast, but just sort of the human behind the scenes. It's so interesting to me that was such an important part of the message that Laura Rodriguez wanted to get past, get through when she was on the show as well. Hey guys, quick commercial break here. If you like what you're hearing, we're brought to you by analysis.tech. You can find us at analysis.tech. Really simple. John Rymer, myself, Dave Marcus, Andy Bartels, Francis Carden, Rick Greenwald, and some really, really great. Am I missing anybody? Ryan Duguid sometimes. And some really, really good research on the topic of UX coming down the line with our good friend Julie Osk. Hey, let's jump back into the cool stuff here, John. Back over to you.
Okay. So we've done a lot of research on the future of applications. And of course, AI is the reason we're asking this question. Um, it, it, we've concluded that there are some significant differences in the ways that AI generation applications will be structured. And we've been writing about that, but we're not experts in user experience. What changes in user experience do you see coming down the pike, Nick?
Yeah. Um, well, let me tell you about a project I've just come off of. It was for a financial services company that's well regarded as being early adopters in terms of technology. They're Fortune 100, a billion-dollar company. And it was the second engagement that I've had with them. I was in-house with them as a consultant about 18, 24 months ago, and delivered a user experience for an internal team whose job it was to prepare deals for this organization's partners, so which they could conduct hundreds of millions of dollars of business with each other. And it
Mm-hmm.
was an 11-step process. Think of like a college or a high school application where it's just step after step after step.
Yeah.
And if any of the 12 employees that were involved with this transaction to prepare everything made a mistake, the impact was, with no exaggeration, in the tens of millions of dollars of remits, of delayed deals, of reimburse. It was a mess if they didn't get it right at the second on the day this deal was supposed to go live. And so the cost of a poor experience was quite high. And the first engagement I had with this client, we delivered this beautiful UI, UX flow, and what we had done was follow the traditional design principles of their organization, the tools that we used, the deliverables that we provided. Um, and when I came back, you know, again, 12 months from today, I saw that it had fallen on the floor, that the internal team either didn't have the skills, the ability, the time, the resources to make sure that that vision was enacted. It's as if an architect had delivered its plans to the general construct contractor and came back to see, a bouncy house instead of a real house. And so I pledge not to make the same mistake, to say that if we're going to come back into this organization for the same product, and do an iteration, as we did last time, our deliverables and our approach has to change. We need to start by starting at the finish and catering towards what the developer can do. And when the developer has a code base of which they can work from and constraints that they have to follow, we need to use these generative tools to then adapt our design and our prototyping process to use that code base, to train that as a model, rather than as a designer painting an abstract picture and asking for the developer to make that into reality. So we started with the reality and the building blocks that are in place, and then built that from there. So it was a complete reversal of the way that my consultant projects have gone in the past, because now we were again reducing that gap and making something that was so much closer to reality and could be used for prototyping and testing, and ensuring that the experience was correct, because the fidelity of it was 95% there. We were working under all the constraints of their version control and their package JSON and their libraries, and we're using these augmented tools to help us get that fidelity. And so it was also this, upon handoff of this project, a meeting with the design team who wasn't quite sure how to interpret what had just been done. And
Right.
I had great sympathy and empathy for them, because they were, despite being technology forward in their organization, trapped within traditional processes and trapped within silos of design with a capital D departments. And when you see this upheaval, this influx, as Rob mentioned, of our industry, you don't want to leave these people behind, because there are these core competencies that require engagement and require training and things like that. So that's where my efforts have been. I know you two are researchers. So coming off this project, I built a readiness assessment, a maturity survey for design organizations to say, what are your barriers? Where are you using it in your workflow now? Do you have cultural barriers at your organization? Is it process? Is it cost? where are you finding AI not being used and why? And shameless plug, you can find that at retrain.gauge.io. And what I hope to do is create a community where I can report back segmentation factor analysis. Here's what we're seeing based upon your size of organization or your team size or your industry. And we can understand how teams will continue to evolve forward so that people like me don't come in and wipe the legs out from underneath them.
That's excellent. So gauge.io and retrain.
Retrain.gauge.io. Yeah.
Gauge.io. Well, let's stay in touch on that, Nick. That sounds fascinating. Over to
And
you, Rob.
we'll give that to you again at the end, folks, so because
Yep.
we want to make sure you remember and know where to find Nick, and we'll
Yep.
put it in all the posts as well. Hey, Nick, I want to finish this off just kind of following up on what you've just teed up, which is, you know, we've kind of got, I think, to this area, this time of detente between designers and application developers, right? I mean, I spent some of my early career at Oracle, where designers were not properly respected, and then actually had an amazing experience between developers and business requirements folks and designers at IBM, where I was lucky enough to work with Laura Rodriguez. We built our processes around things like there was obviously the GitHub, and there was Figmas, and there were tools like that. How does that relationship, particularly between designers and developers, evolve in this new world? And what is the role of tools like, say, Figma in this world going forward?
I'm going to answer the easy question first, and then go over the harder question after that. I think, as I described that role, that engagement that I've just come off of, my sponsor the second time through was the VP of product. My sponsor the first time through was the VP of design. And the VP of product cared nothing about the silos that were in place. The VP of product wants you to get it done because it was important to those internal teams. And I think these definitions are going to start to blur. And as a full caveat, when deciding to make the shift and change the deliverable into a code-based deliverable that was generated through AI, my first action was to find a front-end developer that I would pay as a percentage of this contract on my own dime to help guide me through this new world of version control, of conflict resolution, of build errors, of all of these things that now that I was playing within a code space rather than a visual click and drag space, I needed a guide. And I'd imagine from a business structure standpoint, when you're looking at incorporating AI across teams like design and development, you're going to go to this pod-based format of PMs and engineers and designers all working closer together in a different kind of handoff and scenario than you were before, because now we're going to all be writing in the same repository and database. So that's from a business transformation process. I think that's where I see it going better, is less silos and more collaborative. As for the design tools themselves, we've always, as designers, have forced ourselves to adapt to new tools. Figma was this wonderful several years of serendipity. But before that, there was the Sketch, and before that, there was Balsamiq, and before that, and before that, and before that. And there were many in a long line of ways that designers had to use to communicate themselves visually. And I think Figma, again, when it was taking over that market share, was doing so good, full aware that they're going public within the next week or so, that they had this understanding of this niche in this market. Now, how they adapt to integrations, I think, is going to be the sink or swim with them, because right now it's in its infancy. And there's no reason not to skip ahead to say, well, I'm going to take all this work. And as I alluded to earlier, what we've been doing from a design operations standpoint is crafting pattern libraries and system-based design and understanding how these components all fit to each other. And those are things that algorithms are really good at understanding as patterns and components and mixing those in together. And so we've trained these systems to know what it's supposed to look like. Now the question is how do we integrate it into existing code bases?
Right.
And that's going to be the the measure of success or failure for any design-based application.
I love it. I love it, Nick. Great place to saw it off here. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today. It's Nick Cawthon of Gauge.io. And then retrain.gauge.io is the tool.
Yep, and again, it's with the emphasis is that we're not dead yet. Design is not dead, but we do need to keep evolving. And one way we can do so is have a public visibility of where our barriers to adoption might exist, and to use that as a conversation topic where how do we start to adopt some of these new AI tools going forward.
Fantastic. Can't wait to dive right into that and learn a little more. And Nick, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Nick.
John, thank you for co-hosting as always. Thanks, everybody.